Tyrion let out a small breath, a mixture of relief and residual anger. "Then your lady wife owes me an apology. But I won't hold my breath. I would, however, request that House Stark disclaim any future suspicion against me. I've had quite enough scrapes for 1 year." Ned gave a faint smile, acknowledging the dwarf's predicament. Robert waved a hand impatiently. "Fine, fine. Let it be known that Tyrion Lannister is no enemy of the crown or of House Stark, unless he gives us cause. Now, can we get on with the business of the realm?" Cersei, her lips tight, stepped forward. "My brother is owed restitution for his unlawful abduction, is he not? House Stark must answer for that." Robert scoffed. "No harm, no foul. He's in one piece, isn't he?" Tyrion was not so quick to dismiss it. "I did endure some indignities, your grace. A trifling matter, perhaps, but I can't say I'm eager to see such an offense repeated. Let's call it a misunderstanding. If the Starks will formally acknowledge their error in suspecting me, I'll let it drop." He glanced at Ned, arching a brow. "I'd also like an official statement that House Lannister was not behind the attempt on Bran Stark's life, if that can be arranged. I'd prefer not to have that cloud lingering over us." Ned paused. He looked at Robert, who shrugged. Then at Cersei, whose expression remained frosty. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. I will state publicly that House Lannister bears no blame for the attack on Bran, to the extent that the Crown's investigation suggests Baelish orchestrated it." "Splendid," Tyrion said. "Now that we're all one happy family again, what becomes of our dear friend Peter Baelish?" Robert's mouth twisted. "If I have my way, he'll be drawn and quartered. We've put a price on his head. If he shows his face anywhere in Westeros, he'll find no safe harbor." Tyrion's eyes flickered with cunning. "Not in Westeros, perhaps, but in Essos. It might be another matter. The man does enjoy making a fortune. I wouldn't be surprised if he's off hiring sellswords. A new mercantile empire, perhaps. We should be wary that he might strike at the realm from afar. He's not one to surrender." Cersei tapped her fingers on the table. "We must strengthen the Crown's alliances, ensure that no lord is tempted to hide him, increase patrols along the coasts, if necessary. We can't let him slip back in or send assassins to finish what he started. House Lannister will do its part if the Crown so requests." Ned grimaced inwardly, realizing that in the short term, the Lannisters might gain from offering their help. They would want Robert in their debt. But for the sake of preventing Baelish's return, Ned could see no alternative. "The North will also contribute men to the search, once we've re-established order," he said. "I intend to remain in King's Landing until the King's business is done, and my family is safe." He resolved that once this was over, he would bring his daughters back to Winterfell. King's Landing was no place for them, and so, for a time, there was a fragile cooperation between Stark and Lannister, overseen by King Robert's sullen authority. Ravens flew with messages condemning Baelish. Rewards were offered for information leading to his capture. Tywin Lannister, at Casterly Rock, was informed of the news and responded with scathing words about the Crown's ineptitude for allowing a mere up-jumped lord to cause such havoc. Nonetheless, Tywin must have been relieved that the suspicion on his house for the attempt on Bran's life was now all but lifted. He responded with a promise that should Baelish appear in the Western Lands, he would be apprehended. Ned wondered if Tywin was sincere or only biding his time for a grander political move. Still, weeks turned into months. The weather grew warmer, and the city slowly recovered. Some lords returned to their lands, content that the immediate threat of civil war had been averted. The dire tension that had preceded, in another timeline, Ned Stark's downfall, was replaced by a sense that the true villain had fled. With Baelish gone, the swirl of rumors died down. People still gossiped about the Queen's children, about whether the king might soon drop dead of drink, about Renly's ambitions or Stannis' seclusion on Dragonstone. But the direct clash between Stark and Lannister had softened, if not entirely vanished. The seeds of suspicion about Joffrey's parentage remained, but Ned, still investigating, lacked the impetus that had driven him so fiercely before. He was wrapped up in the many tasks demanded of a hand: mending finances, securing the loyalty of the city watch, rooting out the last of Baelish's men. Sansa was heartbroken at the notion that she might not marry Joffrey after all. Ned had begun to question the match, given all the tensions. The betrothal was not formally broken, but it was in doubt, especially with the realm's uncertain future. Arya, for her part, seemed to relish that the city watch was reformed, making it easier for her to sneak off to her lessons and roam about. Occasionally, Ned heard from Catelyn, who remained in the Vale, uncertain if she should return with the hostility lingering. But Baelish, that cunning man, was not content to vanish. His network of informants still reached King's Landing, sending coded messages pinned to ravens from distant shores. Some found their way to unsuspecting scribes or novices in the Red Keep, who, out of ignorance, delivered them to the wrong recipients, giving Varys glimpses into Baelish's doings. Varys confided in Ned that Baelish might be forging an alliance with Sellsword companies in Lys or Tyrosh. The possibility of an invasion or infiltration worried them both. But Robert laughed it off, claiming that a few thousand Sellswords could never breach the Stormlands or pass the royal fleet. Ned was less certain. He recalled that Baelish's greatest weapon was not brute force, but cunning. If he could sow chaos from afar, that might be enough. One day, as Ned was finishing up a session of the small council, a new arrival came to the Red Keep. Lysa Arryn, Lady of the Eyrie, accompanied by her sickly son, Robin Arryn, and a small retinue. Ned had known Lysa to be a fearful woman, quick to cling to illusions of safety. But her presence here was unexpected, for she had spurned the court after her husband's death. She demanded an audience with the king, claiming she had urgent news about Peter Baelish. Robert, exasperated but curious, granted it. In the throne room, Lysa recounted how a letter had arrived at the Eyrie, sealed in a private cipher that only she and Peter had once shared from their youth in the Vale. She had opened it and found a half-pleading, half-threatening message from Baelish, urging her to hide him at the Eyrie. He invoked their old bond, the times when he had vied for her affection or that of Catelyn, the times he had served under Lord Arryn. Lysa was horrified and confused. She said she believed Baelish might be making his way there, seeking shelter, and she had come to King's Landing to ask for the king's protection or advice on how to handle it. Ned, present for the audience, felt a mixture of disgust and pity. He remembered that Baelish had once loved Catelyn, that Lysa also had some complicated entanglement with him. If Lysa were telling the truth, Baelish might try to claim the Vale as his stronghold. Robert scowled, recalling that the Vale was the land of his old foster father, Jon Arryn, and he would not have a traitor lurking in those mountains. He commanded Lysa to return with a troop of the king's men to stand guard. But Lysa insisted she would not allow outside forces to occupy the Eyrie. She did not trust the crown. Robert thundered that she had come seeking help, so she had two choices: accept his men or handle Baelish alone. Lysa, trembling, begged Ned to intervene. Reluctantly, Ned advised Robert to let Lysa handle her own defenses but to send a small band of watchers under the command of someone trustworthy, if only to confirm that Baelish did not slip through the Vale unopposed. Robert agreed, naming Barristan Selmy as the head of a small delegation of knights to accompany Lysa back to the Eyrie. Barristan, though old, commanded deep respect. If Baelish tried to ingratiate himself with the Vale lords, or slip in quietly, Barristan's presence might deter that. Lysa, though not entirely pleased, agreed, seeing no better option. She set off soon after, leaving Ned with a twinge of foreboding. If Baelish was truly heading there, the confrontation might be dangerous. Baelish would not be cornered easily. Time in the capital stretched on. War did not break out as many feared. The Lannisters and the Starks maintained a tense standoff, overshadowed by the unifying desire to see Baelish brought to justice. Robert tried to reassert his authority as king, though his nights of drunken revelry continued. Cersei quietly consolidated her family's power, forging alliances with lords who valued Lannister gold. Tyrion, for his part, busied himself with reorganizing the city's finances in the absence of a formal master of coin, apparently enjoying the puzzle. Ned was cautious but began to see that Tyrion's wit might be useful if properly harnessed. Varys drifted in and out of the throne room, smiling enigmatically. Then, at last, the day came when Barristan Selmy's raven arrived from the Eyrie with one short sentence. "We have him." Baelish had indeed crept into the Vale, seeking Lysa's support. She had initially feigned a willingness to hear him out, but Barristan's knights had surrounded the hidden mountain pass where Baelish had tried to slip through. It was no glorious battle. Petyr Baelish was not a fool who would fight with a sword. He had tried to bribe them to talk his way out, claiming he had come merely to see an old friend. But Barristan was not swayed, having direct orders from the king. Baelish's small retinue of sellswords was no match for the knightly force. Some were cut down, others fled, leaving Baelish in chains. Now they were marching him back to King's Landing. The news spread through the city like wildfire. Petyr Baelish, the master of coin-turned-traitor, would face the king's justice. Many whispered that Baelish had a silver tongue that might still save him, that once he was before the Iron Throne, he might reveal secrets that could bring down entire houses. Ned realized that was a distinct possibility. Baelish almost certainly had dirt on the Lannisters, the Tyrells, the Martells, even on Robert's bastards, or on the Baratheons themselves. The question was, would Robert even give him the chance to speak? Preparations were made for a public trial in the throne room. The city buzzed with anticipation. Small folk gathered in the streets around the Red Keep, hoping to catch a glimpse of the infamous traitor. Nobles put on their finest clothes to witness what they thought might be the event of the year, maybe the decade. Robert was in a foul mood, but he listened to Ned's advice that they must follow some form of due process, lest Baelish's supporters or any potential allies cry foul. The crown needed legitimacy. Ned suspected that the Lannisters, though they wanted Baelish's downfall, might also fear what secrets he could reveal. They might want the trial to be quick and quiet. Tyrion said as much to Ned in a hushed conversation. "It would not surprise me if dear Petyr had discovered skeletons in House Lannister's closet. His dagger is not the only blade he wields." The day of reckoning arrived under a blazing sun. The throne room was thronged with courtiers, guards, and spectators, though the majority were forced to wait outside. King Robert sat on the Iron Throne, an imposing figure though he had grown heavier over time. Beside him stood Cersei, regal in green and gold. Jaime stood with the Kingsguard, his armor shining. Ned stood to one side his hand, face grim. Tyrion was there too, standing near his siblings but apart, as though uncertain of his role. Renly hovered in the background, arms folded, analyzing the spectacle. Pycelle waited, pale and trembling, while Varys observed with silent calculation. Barristan Selmy entered, leading a small company of knights who escorted Petyr Baelish in irons. The man looked thinner than before, dust on his clothes, a shadow of stubble along his jaw, but his eyes still glinted with the old cunning. He walked with his head held high, no trace of fear outwardly. When they reached the foot of the Iron Throne, Selmy forced Baelish to his knees. Robert's voice boomed. "Petyr Baelish, known as Littlefinger, you stand accused of high treason, conspiring to set House Stark and House Lannister against one another, orchestrating attempts on the life of a royal ward, bribing the City Watch, and attempting the murder of the Hand of the King. How do you plead?" Baelish looked up with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Your Grace, I plead innocence, of course. All these accusations come from men who misunderstand my intentions. It was never my wish to set the wolf and lion at each other's throats. I tried only to serve the realm, to keep the balance. If my words were twisted—" "Silence," Robert growled. "We have proof of your crimes. Men overheard your hired blades speak of your plan. We have your own letters. You tried to kill Stark men. Is that how you serve the realm?" Baelish's smile flickered. He shifted his gaze to Ned. "Oh, I see how it is. And you trust the word of a man who once brandished steel in the throne room, who abducted the Queen's brother, who defies your will whenever it suits him. Forgive me, Your Grace, if I say the deck is stacked." Ned tensed, but Robert spoke first. "You speak of deck stacking. You who lined your pockets with the crown's gold to buy men's loyalties? Enough. If you have evidence to present in your defense, present it now. Baelish's eyes slid over to Cersei. Your Grace, I wonder if you truly wish me to speak freely, because if I do, I might reveal some truths about your wife, your children, or about your finances, or about your own paramours in the city. I know a great many secrets. Are you certain you want me to air them publicly? Robert's face darkened. For a moment, the tension was palpable. Cersei, stiff as a statue, studied Baelish with ice-cold eyes. Tyrion's mouth curved in a faint grin, as if impressed by Baelish's nerve. The entire throne room waited in hush, expecting Robert to erupt. But the king, perhaps remembering some caution that Ned had tried to instill in him, only said, "If you have secrets, spit them out. But know that blackmail will win you no mercy here. If your secrets are worthless, you die. If they have weight, you might die anyway." Baelish seemed to measure his next words carefully. "I only serve the realm," he repeated, voice low. "I believed a conflict between House Stark and House Lannister was inevitable, given the Queen's entanglements and the suspicion around Lord Stark's family. I sought to prevent a war by controlling the pieces on the board, ensuring that if conflict did arise, I could keep it contained. Perhaps I overstepped. Perhaps I used methods you disapprove of. But treason? I served the realm's best interests, from a certain point of view." Robert let out a harsh laugh. "You lie as easily as you breathe. You sowed chaos and nearly started a war all so you could profit from it. That's not service. That's treachery." Baelish's composure cracked for an instant, revealing bitterness. "Treachery, you say? As if half the people in this court have not committed their own brand of treachery. As if your dear queen—" "Enough!" Robert roared, surging to his feet. The entire hall tensed. Jaime's hand went to his sword. The hounds that were dozing at the base of the throne startled awake. Baelish opened his mouth to press further, but Barristan's gauntlet hand closed on his shoulder. Robert swallowed thickly, controlling his rage. "You would fling mud at all of us to save yourself. Your chance is done." He turned to Ned. "Lord Stark, you've been the victim of his plots more than most. What is your counsel? Should I drag this out or be done with it?" Ned looked down at Baelish, remembering how close the man had come to destroying his family. He recalled the men he had lost, the nights of worry. He recalled Sansa's tears, Arya's confusion, the near war with the Lannisters. Yet he also remembered that Baelish might hold secrets about the parentage of the royal children, secrets about the queen that Jon Arryn died for. Could he glean that from Baelish's lips now and expose the truth? But this was no time for a gamble. Baelish was too cunning. He would manipulate any opportunity to sow more chaos. The time for that secret might come, but not at Baelish's convenience. He met Robert's gaze. "Your Grace, I see no reason to prolong the process. Lord Baelish has admitted to enough. He has threatened us with blackmail. He does not deny orchestrating events that threaten the peace of the realm. Pass your sentence." Robert nodded, looking almost relieved. Then he returned his glare to Baelish. "Very well, Peter Baelish, for high treason and conspiracy, I sentence you to die. The sentence will be carried out at dawn. Take him to the dungeons." A hush fell. Baelish, still kneeling, gave a last parting remark. "You will all regret this," he said softly. "The realm thrives on chaos, whether you like it or not. Kill me, and see what rises in my place." But his men were gone, his gold seized, and his cunning would not help him escape the steel grip of the Kingsguard. He was dragged away in chains, head still held high, but the pallor of his face betraying fear he could not hide. The next morning, at dawn, in the courtyard of the Red Keep, a scaffold was erected. The crowd that gathered was smaller than one might have expected for such a dramatic execution, for Robert had insisted on minimal spectacle. Still, lords and ladies, knights and small folk all came to watch. The air was cool, carrying the scent of the sea. Ned stood near the king, who slumped in a seat, face grim. Jaime Lannister and the other Kingsguard were arrayed around. Cersei did not attend, claiming a headache, but Tyrion watched from the shadows. Varys stood at Robert's elbow, silent. Baelish was marched forth, hands bound, wearing a plain tunic. He looked calmer than one might expect, but a faint sheen of sweat on his brow betrayed his nerves. When the executioner asked who would take the head, Robert waved a hand. The king had no desire to swing the sword himself. He gave Ned a meaningful glance, recalling the old custom that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. But Ned was the king's hand, and Robert was the king. If Robert did not want to do it, the duty would fall to the headsman. Ned did not relish the task of personally killing Baelish, though a part of him felt it would be just. Yet Robert had decided. A plain executioner in a hood stepped forward with a massive sword. Baelish did not speak as they forced him to kneel. He locked eyes with Ned one final time, some unspoken plea or condemnation shimmering there. The sword fell. The blow was clean. Baelish's head rolled, blood dark on the scaffold. Thus ended Peter Baelish, the man who had sown chaos for profit, the man who in another life might have manipulated events to catastrophic effect. A hush fell over the courtyard. Robert heaved a sigh, then turned away. Ned felt no satisfaction, only a heavy, somber relief. A single gull cried overhead. The watchers began to disperse, whispering about the final words Baelish had spoken in the throne room. They wondered if more secrets would come to light, if more conspiracies had been seeded in his name.